Sometimes you need to construct a string that contains a lot of quotation marks, for example when building an SQL query to submit to a database. The need to escape nested quotes means the string can quickly become messy, hard to read, and equally hard to maintain. I've got an example here in this file, escape.php, which you can find in the chapter 2, 02_07 folder of the exercise files. On lines 3 to 6, we define several variables, then on line 8 is a double quoted string that uses those variables, but it's also got nested inside it 3 pairs of double quotes. And because we're inside a double quoted string, we need to escape each of those double quotes inside this string. And I think that makes it rather ugly. It also makes it difficult to read. To avoid this problem, you can build the string an alternative way using what's known as heredoc syntax. So let's switch to this other file, heredoc.php, which is also in the exercise files for this video, and lines 3 to 6 define the same variables, so we can now start building a string using heredoc syntax. You can call the variable anything you like. I'm simply going to use heredoc. Then after the assignment operator, you need to add 3 less than symbols, and that needs to be followed by an identifier that will be used to mark the end of the string. The identifier can be any combination of alphanumeric characters, but it can't begin with a number. You can also use an underscore. It's common practice to use all uppercase, but that's not required. I'm going to use EOT, which stands for end of text. Now my editing program seems to think I'm looking for something else, so I just need to click alongside that to get rid of that code hint. And immediately after my identifier, I need to press return or enter, and my editing program has automatically inserted that identifier followed by a semicolon. If your editing program doesn't put this in automatically, you'll need to type it in yourself. But between the opening identifier and the closing identifier, I can now start typing my string, and I don't have to worry about quotes at all. I can use double quotes, single quotes, and variables, and they will all be interpreted correctly by PHP. So in, and then we'll have some double quotes. Inside there we'll put our variable, title, and another variable there, the author. Yet another variable, our Android. Some more double quotes. And notice that as I'm typing, I'm not getting any syntax errors shown to me by my editing program. My editing program uses red wavy lines to indicate syntax errors, and there are no errors at all. So let's continue. So I've used double quotes, I've used variables, I've also used apostrophes or single quotes in there, and everything looks fine as far as my editing program is concerned. It's not complained at all about syntax errors. So after the closing identifier, let's echo our variable, which I've called heredoc. Save that, and then load the page into a browser. And that string is displayed perfectly. PHP has processed all of the variables, and it's also preserved the double quotes and the apostrophes or single quotes that I've put in there. So this can be very useful for building complex strings without having to worry about escaping quotes. But there is something that you need to be very careful about. Let's go back into the editing program. There must be nothing on this line after the opening identifier. If I click in there and add a space, immediately my editing program alerts me to lots of problems. Let's just save that and refresh the browser. And indeed, we've got a syntax error. There's an unexpected 2 less than symbols. So let's get rid of that extra space there. And the syntax error goes away. You also need to be extremely careful with the ending identifier. There must be absolutely nothing else on the line apart from the identifier and the semicolon. If I add a space in there, immediately this turns to a different color. I've got a wavy line down here saying that I've got a syntax error. And if I save that and refresh, indeed, I still do have a syntax error, unexpected end of file. There must be no space, nothing else on the line after that, and indeed there must be nothing else at the beginning of the line. We get the same problem if you put some space in there at the beginning of the line that has got that closing identifier. This is one of the very few cases where white space is not ignored by PHP. You mustn't have any white space around the closing identifier and the semicolon, and there must be no white space or anything else on the line after the opening identifier. Apart from that, heredoc syntax is extremely easy to use. You don't use it very often because it's rare to have to build long strings that contain a mixture of literal text, quotes, and variables, but it can be useful for building SQL queries for submission to a database.